there was a great example of negotiating and understanding individuals in a book I read, and it was two individuals fighting over a lemon. And the one person wanted the whole lemon, the other person wanted the whole lemon. And a great compromise would be to cut it in half. But with a little more understanding, it turned out one person wanted the inside, the pulp of the lemon to make lemonade. The other person wanted the peel. So a lot of times there's a win-win that can be created if you just take a little bit of time and gain the understanding.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Happy Practice Playbook. I'm Mo Jones, and in each episode of the show, you'll hear conversations with dentists, office managers, staff, and specialists who know how to create a happy practice. Today, we are joined by Dr. Gary Cash, an award-winning dentist in Austin, Texas, with over 16 years of experience. Additionally, his practice was also a recipient of the Design Innovation Award in 2021. Welcome, Gary. How are you today?
Doing great, Mo. Thank you. Appreciate it being on.
I'm excited too. I genuinely love doing this podcast and the opportunity to meet with so many amazing people in the field of dentistry. Makes me feel a little underqualified, but by the end of this, I will essentially be a dentist just without the degree.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, we're going to get right into it. So, of course, as our listeners know, we like to start with a little statistic related to our topic. So today's statistic is 54% of employees say a strong sense of community, including great work, great coworkers, celebrating milestones, and a common mission, kept them at a company longer than was in their best interest. So how do you think unity within the team adds to that statistic?
Sure. I really think taking time to beyond the clinical day to day to actually sit down. Morning huddles are great for going over patient reviews and patient information and things that need to be touched on throughout the clinical day. But I always like to set aside a little bit of time to hear about the team. Uh, how was your weekend? Uh, your your little baby was sick. Are they feeling better? Uh, what's going on next weekend? And just take a little bit of bonding time. I also really like to, not always easy to do because we're all very busy, of course, but we like to try to at least quarterly set up something outside the office. Go do miniature golf, or go do some type of event that's just a lot of fun. And I find that we bond and think people are more cohesive when we get together back in the office. I think that really helps.
So with that, I'm sure, as many of our listeners can relate to, you're going to have a lot of different personalities in your office. The way people communicate, the way they express themselves. How do you find that balance of meeting individuals' needs while creating that unity?
Sure. I think that goes back to hiring the right team, and I think the unity, hopefully, or tends to just fall into place. The way I've always approached interviewing and getting a new team member, of course, they have to meet qualifications. They have to have the skills that we need to provide excellent dentistry. But at that point, I really like the team to come in. We have people come back for more than one interview, but we generally tell them we appreciate your time, and I know you're busy, and this is a good sign. We want you to come back one more time. And we had a team interview. And so before we make a hiring decision, we really like to see how everyone feels because certain people are more shy, certain people are more outgoing, and we just like to make sure those personalities click. I think that really helps build the unity and build the cohesiveness.
So a follow-up with that team interview, how do you gather that feedback from the team? Do you do it collaboratively with everyone's thoughts at the end, or do you ask individuals what they thought on a one-on-one kind of interview, I guess, format?
Sure. Well, our business manager, I would rely heavily on her. Should it be an admin position? Uh, if it were a hygienist that we needed to bring on board a second hygienist, I would really talk to our lead hygienist or our hygienist that is the most veteran and say, what do you think? Do you think you're going to mesh clinically? Do you think he or she is a great fit for our patients? But we generally will do an interview when we're getting serious about a hire and tell them thank you, we appreciate it, we'll be in touch, and we do all get together collaboratively. But if I feel that it's I need to sort of hone in on with someone one on one, we definitely do that because I mean, as we know in dentistry, sometimes you connect with someone on your team maybe daily or collectively an hour over the whole day, whereas someone else on the team, you're shoulder to shoulder with them nearly the whole workday. So we really try to. It depends on the position, but I think that team input is just invaluable.
And so, really, when you're asking for more additional and deeper depth feedback, you're going to the needs of the business and where it's most related to that person. Because I guess you want to know your input from your front of house staff for someone in the back, but you're more likely to want to know exactly with someone who's working with them directly because I mean, I guess that makes sense though, right? Because you want to be able to meet the needs of your business. So you want to have that team effort, but also making sure you are hiring for those specific things appropriately.
That's true, and we because I think we are uh, relative to the average team out there. I think we are very cohesive, so it happens fairly organically. I think when we bring someone in and we interview them, it's amazing how much consensus there is amongst the team. I mean, generally, fortunately, we haven't had to do too much hiring. We have a team that's been here for a while for the most part, but it's amazing that out of the five people who are sitting in and we're collaborating or discussing about the person we just met, usually there's a consensus. Wow, they seem like they're a great fit, or I'm not so sure that they would be a good fit. And I mean, of course, everyone has their individual opinions, but I think that a lot of that happens organically.
So, of course, there's a myriad of factors that would lead to a practice needing to bring in more people or hire, right? How much do you think Unity plays into those other factors of needing to hire people, whether that's a lot or little?
Oh, I think a lot. Again, we definitely need to have in dentistry clinically. We need to possess clinical skills, but uh, every practice is a little bit different in their style and their treatment style. Are they warm to their patients? Do they know their patients' birthdays and life milestones? And uh, is there a lot of discussion and bonding, or is it more efficiency and time and getting someone in and out within the 30 minutes or an hour? Is that more imperative to the patients? And getting individuals that possess those qualities or at least have a knack for those qualities, I think is imperative.
So, has there ever been a time in your experience where you felt disconnect from your team? And if you did, how did you solve that to get things reconnected?
Sure. Well, we had it's almost like that was a scripted question, and it was not, everyone. We had one just yesterday, matter of fact. We're working on just really upping our game with photography. And I was being very rigid on something that I wanted with the camera settings and the perspective and where to take the picture in the operatory. And we have a good relationship. And my assistant came to me and said, I think if you give me a little more latitude with this, I can make the picture better. And I took a little bit of time and opened up some photo files and looked at the magnification of one photo to the other and how they would line up. And I basically took the time to say, this is why I'm being a stickler on this point. It's not that I want the gadget set at 1.5 and you want it set at 1.2. And so I think when you have a disconnect, really just learning your feelings and the why behind it is a huge help. Understanding each other. There was a great example of negotiating and understanding individuals in a book I read, and it was two individuals fighting over a lemon, and the one person wanted the whole lemon, the other person wanted the whole lemon, and the logical thing would be, well, a great compromise would be to cut it in half. But with a little more understanding, it turned out one person wanted the inside, the pulp of the lemon to make lemonade. The other person wanted the zest, the peel. So there a lot of times there's a win-win that can be created if you just take a little bit of time and gain the understanding.
So with that also, so I think there's always going to be, not always, there will be sometimes times of disconnect. And I think that's just normal because we're people, we feel different things, we have off days. When would you say is the appropriate time and way to address that, if whether it's disconnect between two of your staff members or you and a staff member, and where it's in a timely manner and fashion as well?
Sure, that I know for everyone listening, bless you. I know for everyone listening, and included, myself included, that is a huge challenge because uh, again, we're treating patients. We're conscious of a schedule, um, but ideally, I think those things are addressed at the end of the day or the beginning of the day when we're not looking at our watch. We know there's not a patient waiting or someone running behind. So I try to do them at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. Number one, to adhere to the schedule, but also I don't want, if we are going to talk about something or air something, I really don't like to feel rushed or make anyone on the team feel like I'm not listening. And I encourage them to do the same with each other. Uh, at the same time, we don't like it to go on for a long period of time. I think that's really a key too. Uh, for instance, if there was some stress or two people had a misunderstanding, I think if you don't address it soon that day or as soon as possible, it just sort of has a way of festering. So I think it's great when two people on a team try to resolve it with each other, and they try to do that as soon as possible. And the moments where I felt like something's not getting resolved, I try to get involved and bring everyone in the room involved and say, let's talk this out. Let's hear each other's side, and I think that helps.
So as you've kind of already mentioned too, the question I have is, what's the process that you set in place for your staff? You mentioned that you like it when they go and talk to each other, but what's the process that you've set for them when it should be appropriate that it should then be escalated to you or have, others brought in to help solve the problem if it's not getting resolved?
Sure. I usually try to just, fortunately, we're a small enough team that just by default we're cohesive. We're not multiple locations and a larger practice. So I think that sort of happens organically too. Just feeling the temperature in the office, so to speak. But if I see something that's ongoing, or if, say, a miscommunication started in the morning and I see or feel it carrying through to the end of the day, I try to say, hey, can we take 5 or 10 minutes when we're finished and try to air it then. But we don't necessarily have a protocol that we follow, and I think that's a hard thing to put in a box because people are different, and people may have a bad day because they're not feeling well. It could have been something at home. It could have been the last patient that rubbed them the wrong way. So it's for me, it's really hard to put that in a protocol or a box.
So since you don't have it in a box, then it sounds though it takes effort on your part to making sure you understand and know your staff so that when issues do arise, you know how to communicate with them and help solve the problem if maybe they're not able to see and solve it eye to eye with each other, right?
Uh, Agreed. And one thing that I've learned practicing for a little while now, and I would say this to anybody just starting out, that never ends. In the sense that you always need to, I guess, support everyone on the team and work at that cohesiveness. It doesn't always happen by accident. So it's, I guess, constant vigilance, in a good way. You don't want people to drift apart or develop animosities. It's better to address them as soon as you can, but also just keep nurturing those relationships.
So I like that you pointed out because I think too sometimes when we talk about getting to know people in relationships, we forget as well as with ourselves that we're a changing people. We're always adjusting. And so it's not to say that, if I tell you my favorite color today is pink, it's going to be purple tomorrow, but things happen over time whereas maybe right now this is my hobby. Maybe because things in my life are changing or things like that, I'm going to have a different hobby. And to your point of having that vigilance allows you to keep up with that. And I think that helps your people feel appreciated and being able to come to you and communicate with each other, right?
It does, and I wasn't always in that mindset. When you're just starting out, you want the practice to go well. You want to cover your overhead. You want to make a good impression on patients, and you get lost in the day to day of that, and you forget, hey, everybody on the team has their own families, their own concerns, their own friends, and their own changing goals. And I think just trying to be involved in that and have that consideration, it goes a long way. I don't know the statistic exactly, but I know that a lot of employees, as they're interviewed, money isn't always at the top of the list. It's the environment you're working in that really means a lot. Of course, most of us aren't here, or probably none of us are here just for the fun or just as a hobby in dentistry. But you have to feel good about where you go every day, and you have to feel good about the team that you're with, or it's just not sustaining.
So, with that, of course, I think you're well aware, as all of us, that, COVID-19 really took things for a turn and really changed the way that all of us view our work life balance, even just like how we do our job, right? And how would you say that Unity played a part in how your practice had to adjust to the needs of the pandemic?
Sure. I actually think that, of course, none of us, if we had it to do all over, none of us wanted to go through COVID and all of the perils of that. Uh, but like many practices, we had to scale down. We were at a point doing strictly emergencies, and I don't do root canals and I don't do oral surgery, so we were doing very little dentistry and no hygiene. That was our state mandate for a while. I kept everyone on that I could, and I did some temporary layoffs and made sure I was in very close contact with everyone that we couldn't keep on board for a brief time, and just really took the time to tell everyone what the situation is, and we're very transparent with our numbers in the office. It's not a secret on production, and it's not a secret on overhead. So I just really spoke from the heart with everyone, and said that there is a place as soon as we can be back. uh, and I think that people, the team sort of learned what I was made of during that tough time, and they knew that I did everything they can to keep them employed, to keep them safe. And it really, I think we bonded a little bit more, or we bonded a bit going through that together.
So it sounds though you had to be a little bit more vulnerable than maybe you were before with this, right?
I did. I did.
So how would you go about that? Because I think a lot of our listeners are, practice owners and they're dentists, and I think they have this mindset that you kind of have to be large and in charge. You kind of have to set this bar, not be vulnerable because the end of the day, not only are you the doctor, but you're the practice owner, you have a business to run, and that's how things have to be. So how do you get to the point to be vulnerable in an appropriate way with your team?
Sure, it's a balancing act. I mean, of course, you need to be a leader, and you need to make decisions that a leader does. But I think some of the best qualities of a leader is letting your team know, letting people know who are working in the same direction or rowing in the same direction as you, what your vulnerabilities are, what your weaknesses are. Because at the end of the day, no one expects you to be perfect, and no one expects you to have all the answers. So I think it's showing the vulnerability, uh, being a strong leader, having the strength to make the decisions, but also showing the vulnerability when the answer is I don't know. And it's amazing the respect that is given when you really just forthcoming. I don't know, or I'm working on this and getting better at it, and doing my best. And I know this is a weakness, and this is a strength for you, whoever you're engaging with on the team. And I think just being being real with that goes a long way. And I think you ultimately end up gaining the respect of your team.
I think exactly that, being real. So at the end of the day, most people, you're always going to have your outliers, of course, but most people know that the person standing or sitting in front of them is a human too, just like them. They have good days, they have bad days. There are things they don't know, and there's some things they excel at. And so I think sometimes we just get so lost in ourselves or feeling like we have to be, ABC, that it's like sometimes people just want you to be honest and transparent, and seeing that even though you're maybe at a different level or place in your life, that you're still human, you still have struggles, you're still figuring things out, it just looks different from them, versus just being like, oh, I've definitely got it together, even though inside you're losing your mind and you're like, I just want to just dig a hole and just stay in there for 5 years.
It's That's true, and it's definitely a balance, and it's always a work in progress. But I really think your team does rely on you to make some tough decisions, uh, but that vulnerability just really goes a long way.
So, in talking about all this, we can clearly see how the unity affects, of course, your team and how that's important on the team side and with you and your staff. But can you tell me, like, how it's having that unity has elevated your patient's experience?
Absolutely. Uh, it's amazing when you have a cohesive team. I really feel like the team has my back, which it makes all the difference. There's just something organic about it that that I can't put into words, but patients know if if the team, if your assistant, if your admin team support you and believe in what you're doing, and you just can't act your way through that. I don't think so. If they believe in the treatment you're doing, believe in what your mission is as a practice, that's contagious in a good way. And we work really hard in the office, and I always will work really hard at consistency, uh, amongst all of the team members and what we're conveying, the messages we're conveying to patients. Uh, I mean, little things. We're going, an example, we extracted a tooth, which I don't do very often, but we extracted a tooth and we're going to put some sutures in. I want to take the sutures out in whatever the dentist chooses, 10 to 14 days, 7 days. And then let's say you step out of the room and they talk to your assistant and they say, oh, we'll take those out in 5 days. And they go up to the admin team and they say, oh, well, I think they'll take that out in a week or two. I mean, the biology probably isn't going to know the difference between 5 days and 7 days, or 10 days and 14 days, but there's a level of reassurance and comfort when patients get a consistent message. And so we really spend a lot of time in team meetings talking about delivering a consistent message. And I think it's important that everyone believes in it. If you say, let's use product A because I think it's going to help prevent decay. I don't want anyone to say that if they don't believe that, but just being able to deliver that consistent message and everyone to get behind a vision, it just creates a level of comfort and reassurance to a patient that has really served us well.
And I think to your point, this is me, I'm kind of a visual person, but when I think of a cohesive team, it's not that every single person has to know exactly what every single person does or how to do their job, but it's knowing that end goal. So I don't know if you if you've ever seen the movie Hotel Transylvania. I think it's the first one. But there's this part where Jack, I think, is trying to find his daughter and he's in the city, but it's daytime and all these people, right? They're like, he has to get through. And so you had all these different people. And to help Dracula get across, they all, like, as he was running along, had like something to cover him, right? And so, and it was just different items. Someone had a scarf, someone had this big hat. And so it was like, different people, right? They were going to be up on this line, further up than someone else, but they all had that common goal and knew their part to get Dracula from, the beginning to the end so he could go find his daughter, and I think that's what a cohesive team is, that, you have your place on the line. It could be multiple points, but knowing your part to play with, with this experience, the patient experience from when they enter the office to when they leave, and that the patient is consistent and they know their pathway of what's happening, right?
That's very true, and being able to hand that off to a team member and know that they know their part, they have your back, and vice versa, and just knowing who's an expert at what roles, and it's okay to say to a patient as well, I don't know. There's a tremendous amount of respect that comes from that. They Of course, patients come to you for answers, and they come to you for treatment, and they come to your hygienist and your team for answers and for treatment. But it's okay if you don't know. And I've always really encouraged everyone on the team. It's okay not to know the answer, but I'll find out. We'll speak to the person that needs to that does know the answer. That's we try to really foster that philosophy.
And I think to that too. I mean, for our listeners too, that hey, there may be a day where you're not going to know everything, and it's okay to go off and ask. And then if there comes a point though where maybe this is maybe your patients are asking a consistent question and you're not knowing the answer, or maybe you do know the answer because it's been asked many times, making sure that that knowledge is spread to the rest of the team. Like, hey, we're starting to see I'm just thinking of like TikTok trends. Like, I'm sure you have patients that are like, I saw this on TikTok, and is this true? And so spreading, giving that information to the rest of your staff, like, hey, people have been asking a lot about this from a TikTok trend. This is how, as being a practice owner, it's how I want to address it and educate our patients in that way, and just having that clear communication. So I think, and because there's always room for improvement, right? There's always room for us to be better and to answer those questions. Like, the world is always changing. We're not going to be able to say, hey, I know all of this and I know everything. No, technology is growing at a rapid pace. So there's going to be another thing that we have to catch on and learn.
Always, it never stops. And I think that's a great point. We really do look for trends when a question comes up over and over: which electric toothbrush is best? And those are the moments where we try to sit down as a team and talk to our hygienists. They see these patients every 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. When they're using brand A and they're using brand B, which one are you seeing that yields the best results? Which patients are looking better? And we try to deliver that consistent message across the practice. It's actually pretty amazing. It seems as though that would be really easy to do, but it's a challenge, and it's always a work in progress. That's why I think of companies like McDonald's, and it's amazing to me that a French fry will taste the same in Utah as Austin, Texas, as Detroit, Michigan, and on the surface that seems kind of simple, but when you think about it, being able to perfect that recipe from coast to coast and arguably around the world, although some people say McDonald's tastes a bit different in Europe, but the point being that work in maintaining consistency is a big job and a big challenge, and that's why when you think of something as simple as a French fry, that's a pretty big accomplishment to be able to do that.
And honestly, when you were saying that, I'm like, I feel like that was a dumb moment, but also yes, like anywhere I go, if I want a particular kind of French fry, I go to McDonald's. Granted, there are definitely places that you're like, you don't go to that location because something's always broken that's off. But consistently, it's like I know I can go to McDonald's whether I'm in Seattle, I'm here in Utah, or if I go home to Kansas City, that I'm gonna get that same fry, which you're right is truly that's incredible. Now that I'm thinking about, it, like, wow,
It
who would have
is.
thought?
It is, and maintaining that over a period of time is a big challenge. I mean, if you've been to a favorite hotel somewhere, they always put a mint on my pillow, or they always, or I work with this company, and every year I get a birthday card, or a thing that's very important for us in the practice. If we have a patient refer another patient, that is a huge compliment. We always do a handwritten thank you, and to miss that once or twice, patients will notice that. So maintaining that consistency takes a lot of vigilance, and uh, it's true. Now, if McDonald's could only get the ice cream machine not to be broken, that would be a
That would be the ultimate dream. But yes, driving
that's
back to that point that you'd mentioned of having that constant vigilance with your team, but also with your patients, right? That, there's always going to be something to make sure you have to look at. But if you're staying on top of it, it's a lot easier versus if you had never taken the time to know a patient or your staff and, they've been your patient or, staff member for 5 years, that's so much to, figure out and catch up on versus I've been working consistently with them for 5 years, and I may not know all the nitty gritty in between those 5 years, but I know that, hey, at this point right now, they're into this, and this, or they referred this patient. This is the work we're doing on them, and it's staying current with that thing. It's that's those small steps. The small steps make the biggest difference versus
they
trying to
do.
just do those big steps every day. Like that's overwhelming.
Yeah, they do. Yes, small sustained steps make a huge difference. It's I don't know that the team is always a big fan, but I'm a big fan of checklists, and it's interesting because, like everyone, we're certainly not perfect, and as we stray from a process or procedure, and it starts to snowball problems, we go. If I go back to a checklist that maybe we've written a year or two ago, it's amazing how when you go through that, if we just kind of go back to basics and review, this is what we do every time to check out a patient, and we review that checklist, it's amazing that the problems of the day or the problems we've been experiencing, how many of them can be remedied by sticking with that process. And I think that speaks to those small, sustained efforts. If we remember to dot these I's and cross these T's, it makes the day ultimately flow smoother, and it pays dividends. And I really like it for anyone new on the team because no one is going to walk in and know how your team does things, how you want to have a patient flow through the office. So it's a great learning tool for someone that's new because everyone does need a little bit of training, and they shouldn't just be thrown in. I mean, yes, a hygienist knows how to to treat soft tissue, but how is it done in our office? Who greets the patient? Who walks the patient out? Who gives them their things that they take home, their toothbrush, their floss, or whatever it is you do in your office?
Small sustained efforts lead to big things. That's good. You got to take it little by little.
You do.
We are almost out of time, but we love to leave our listeners with a motivational tip. So if you could give our listeners one page out of your playbook of success, what would it be?
Sure. I think it would definitely be with the consistency. Uh, think about things that you do for patients. Think about things that the way you're going to treat patients. Convey that philosophy to your team and work very hard at staying consistent and delivering that message from the moment the phone rings to when the patient leaves the office for a treatment day.
So focus on the patient and stay consistent with that goal.
It is.
All right.
Absolutely.
Consistency is key, listeners. It is key. Alrighty. Well, that is a wrap for today. Thank you so much for being with us, Gary. It has been so great.
Thank you, Mo. I really appreciate it. It's great being on.
Yeah, it's always a good time here at the Happy Practice Playbook. And thanks to everyone listening. Don't forget to join the Happy Practice Playbook Facebook group, where we'll be discussing this topic more and sharing other helpful resources to help you keep you and your people happy. As always, I'll be posting to get all of your tips and tricks as well. If you like what you heard today, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our next episode. And we hope you'll join us next time. It's your girl, Mo Jones.